Hello and welcome to this new series of Shikara Academy, the weekly current affairs recap with MCQs. So, what we will be providing you in this series is the complete revision of the previous week's current affairs in the form of MCQs. So, we'll be solving 10 to 15 MCQs based on the current affairs of the past week. So, starting with the first week of July 2025, let's begin. Now pay attention to this question. Which of the following has become the first nation to officially recognize the Taliban government in Afghanistan? Okay, this was in news recently in last week itself. Okay, so what happened was in 1996, the Taliban first captured power in Afghanistan and they named the state the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Then after the 9/11 attacks in US, so the US invaded Afghanistan in 2001, and in 2001 the rule of Taliban ended in Afghanistan. So till 1996 to 2001 there was the first phase of Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. But in 2021 the US forces they withdrew. So after 2001, the US and its allies they established the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. So they established the state, the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan, and then in 2021, the US forces they withdrew from Afghanistan, and the Taliban then took over control back. Okay, so in 2021, there was return of Taliban, and that happened on 15th August 2021. And they again established the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Now, over the past 4 years, none of the UN member states or none of the countries has officially or formally declared fundamental diplomatic ties. No, none of these bodies, none of these powers, none of the world countries they established the diplomatic relation with this Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, that is the Taliban state. But now recently Russia has become the first nation to officially recognize the Taliban government in Afghanistan after accepting the credentials of the group's new appointed ambassador in Moscow. So what happened was the Taliban, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, they appointed a representative or an ambassador to its embassy in Russia, and Russia now formally acknowledged that okay, this is the ambassador, and the Russian Foreign Ministry has officially cleared the name. So now, this way, Russia has become the first nation. Many of the countries, including India, we have some backdoor channels uh, when diplomatically engaging with Afghanistan or the Taliban rule in Afghanistan. But Russia has become the first to formally accept or to formally recognize the rule of Taliban in Afghanistan. So the correct answer here will be option D, Russia. Question number 2. India has agreed to sign a new 10-year defense partnership framework with which of the following countries? UK, Germany, US, and France. So now see. Defense Minister Raksha Mantri Rajnath Singh, he went to he is about to go to US in this year. So later part of this year, the defense minister will travel to US and will meet its US counterpart, that is the Secretary of Defense. It is Pete Hegseth. Okay, so Pete Hegseth is the US Defense Secretary. We have Defense Minister, they have the Defense Secretary, the equal position. So Mr. Rajnath Singh, the Defense Minister of India, the Raksha Mantri of India, will travel to US and meet his counterpart, the US counterpart, Pete Hegseth, who is the Defense Secretary of US. And during that meet, what is the agenda? They will sign that they have agreed to sign a new 10-year defense partnership framework. Okay, when they will be meeting later this year. So the correct answer here will be option C, United States. So India has agreed to sign a new 10-year defense partnership framework with United States. Okay, we have just agreed to sign. We have not signed it yet. Please note that. Now, question 3. A retaliatory duty refers to it is implemented to force another country to lower its tariff or make trade concessions, reducing dependence on a particular country by expanding trade with other nations, regulatory measures other than tariffs that restrict imports, and imposing duty on foreign goods sold below fair market value. Now, the Trump administration in the USA is putting on tariffs or is threatening to put tariffs on the countries around the world, left, right, and center. So, uh, we have this retaliatory tariff. It is the tariff that is imposed to another country to lower its tariff or to make trade concessions. Okay. Now, India is proposing. The officials in India, they are proposing. Why is it in news? Because officials in India are proposing to impose retaliatory duties under the World Trade Organization norms against the US auto tariff. So US is putting tariffs. US is putting undesirable tariffs, also we can say illegal tariffs that are not under WTO norms. So US is putting tariff on India's auto sector and the auto sector around of other countries as well. So the officials in India, the Indian government is now proposing to impose the retaliatory duties. So here the correct answer will be a retaliatory duty or retaliatory tariff. It is implemented to force another country to lower its tariff or to make trade concessions. So ultimate goal is to, like, we want US to lower the tariff that they are imposing on us. Now moving on to fourth question. The Gulf of Paria was recently in the news. It is a shallow water body between. Okay. So recently, uh, the Prime Minister of India traveled to Trinidad and Tobago. Okay. And this question is taken from that visit only. So we have Trinidad, an island over here. Trinidad and Tobago is an island nation lying in the Caribbean Sea. And here we have Venezuela, that is the South American continent. Now, this Gulf of Paria is the Gulf is a very shallow water body, a shallow sea. We can say it as a shallow sea. So it lies between the Venezuela and Trinidad Island. And the capital of Trinidad and Tobago, that is Port of Spain, lies on the coast of this Gulf of Paria. So Gulf of Paria is a shallow body of water between Trinidad and Venezuela on the South American peninsula. Okay. And it is very important. It is located in Caribbean Sea, and Caribbean Sea itself forms a part of the larger Atlantic Ocean. So the Gulf of Paria was recently in the news. Why it was recently in news? Because of PM visit to Trinidad and Tobago. Okay. So it is the island, it lies between the island of Trinidad and Venezuela. Now, question number 5. It is about a personality. Okay. We consider the following statements. He was born in Kolkata in 1893 to an influential Brahmo Samaj family. And Brahmo Samaj family are like very aristocratic or well-to-do families in the 19th century. He came back to India and spent his life in both setting up statistics, the science of collecting and reading data, as an academic discipline and applying the academic knowledge to practical scenarios. So he was a master of statistics. And in 1950, he helped India conduct its national sample surveys. So this national sample survey and statistics is the keyword here that we have to catch and tell the who the following personality is. So the answers, the options are Kalampudi Radhakrishnan Rao or C.R. Rao, J.K. Ghosh, Jayanta Kumar Ghosh, Anil Kumar Gain, and A.K. Gain, and Prasanta Chandra Mahalanobis. Okay, P.C. Mahalanobis, on which we have our one of the 5-year plan named after him, and comment the name of that plan, whether it is the first 5-year plan, the second 5-year plan, or third 5-year plan that is named after PC Mahalanobis. Okay. Now, the correct answer was PC Mahalanobis. He was the a statistics maestro, and June 29 is honored as National Statistics Day. It is the birth anniversary of India's father of statistics, that is Prasanta Chandra Mahalanobis, that is PC Mahalanobis, was the father of statistics in India. He, often known as the professor, was instrumental in establishing the Indian Statistical Institute in Kolkata. So he was known as the father of statistics in India, and he was instrumental in setting up on establishing the Indian Statistical Institute that is in Kolkata, as well as the planning commissions. He was a foundational pillar of the planning commissions in India. He was born in Kolkata in 1893 to an aristocratic Brahmo Samaj family, and he attended Presidency College, the prestigious Presidency College at that point of time, and moved to London for further studies. When he returned to India, he dedicated his life to both establishing statistics as an academic field and applying the statistical knowledge to real world problems. India's national sample surveys, okay, have long been admired around the world for the detailed information they provide about the homes in India. Okay, and this data, which includes income, work status, health, consumption habits, is then used to guide policy decision. In 1950, Mahalanobis helped launch the first such survey. That is he was responsible for launching the first national sample survey in India. And the year was 1950. So the correct answer here will be Prasanta Chandra Mahalanobis, that is PC Mahalanobis. Okay, he was born in Kolkata, and in 1950, he helped India conduct its first national sample surveys. Now, moving on to the next question. With reference to fertilizers, consider the following statements. In 2023, India imported around 20% of its total fertilizer from the Gulf countries, and India imports 100% of muriate of potash. Now, seeing the fertilizer import in India, so India imports approximately 20% of its urea, 60% of its diammonium phosphate. That is, so India, we import three type of fertilizers: urea, diammonium phosphate, and muriate of potash. Out of this, 20% of urea is imported, 60% of diammonium phosphate, that DAP, is imported, and 100% muriate of potash is imported. Okay, so the statement second is correct because we are importing 100% muriate of potash. So statement second becomes correct. Now, the worldwide headlines focus on the oil prices in the aftermath. So this particular question was framed because of the Iran-Israel crisis. Okay, so as you know, Israel attacked Iran and US also attacked Iran. So there was disturbance in the West Asia or the Middle East region, and that had a negative impact on our own fertilizer supply. Okay, so fertilizers, they are quietly and less obvious catastrophe because most of the focus is on the crude oil or energy security, but our fertilizer security also has interest in the region. India's fertilizer security is linked to the Middle East since the country relies heavily on countries such as Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and Oman. Okay, we rely on Qatar, we rely on Saudi Arabia, we rely on Oman for both finished fertilizers as well as natural gas. And natural gas is the primary material that is required to manufacture fertilizers in India. So the ultimate supply of the fertilizer will come down. We will not be able to produce them effectively because the natural gas, there will be a deficiency of natural gas. Then the supply of natural gas is impacted. Then the supply of fertilizers, the finished fertilizers that come in themselves, that supply will also get impacted. In 2023, India purchased approximately 20 to 25% of its total fertilizer from the Gulf countries. Okay, so that makes the first statement correct. Now we can see that in 2023, India imported around 20% of its total fertilizer from the Gulf countries. This statement is correct. Then India imports 100% of muriate of potash. This statement is also correct. Therefore, the correct answer here will be option C, that is both 1 and 2. Moving on to the next question. Consider the following statements about the Defense Acquisition Council, a very important body, DAC, Defense Acquisition Council. It is headed by the Prime Minister. The DAC is the top body for clearing major capital acquisitions for defense. And we have to identify the correct statement. Now, this Defense Acquisition Council, why it was in news? Because recently it cleared a series of big ticket procurements worth 1.05 lakh crores for the armed forces. So the procurement of the armed forces, all the large procurement of the armed forces, like is cleared by this Defense Acquisition Council. Okay. And the DAC is led by the Defense Minister. So the DAC is led by the Defense Minister Rajnath Singh, has granted acceptance of necessity, the first step in a lengthy defense procurement process, to 10 capital acquisition bids. So, however, grants of AON do not always result in the final order. So we have the DAC, the Defense Acquisition Council. It has cleared the first step. What it has done? Okay, it has cleared the acceptance, or it has granted the acceptance of necessity, that is AON. But the granting of AON doesn't necessarily mean that the deal will entirely go through. Okay, it is not considered as a final order. So we say that statement 1 is not correct, because statement 1 says that it is headed by Prime Minister, but in reality it is being headed by the Raksha Mantri, that is the Defense Minister of India, Rajnath Singh. The Defense Acquisition Council is the primary authority in charge of approving big capital acquisitions for defense. So, capital acquisitions, the big capital acquisitions for defense is first, it has to be cleared by the Defense Acquisition Council. Therefore, statement second becomes correct. So, this is not headed by the Prime Minister, but by the Defense Minister. Defense Acquisition Council is headed by the Defense Minister, and it is a top body for clearing major capital acquisition for defense. This statement is correct. Therefore, the correct answer here will be option B, that is 2 only. Moving on to the next question. With reference to recently released Household Consumption Expenditure Survey for 23-24, consider the following statements. The difference in daily per capita calorie intake between India's top and bottom 5% of consumers narrowed in 23-24, with the former eating fewer calories and the later increasing their intake of calories. Indians in urban areas reduced their daily consumption of protein in 23-24 in comparison to 2000, a year prior, that is 2022 to 23, while those in rural areas have increased protein consumption in the same period. Now, let's see the outcomes of this household consumption expenditure survey. Okay. So, what were the observations? That the difference in the daily per capita calorie intake between India's top and bottom 5% of consumers narrowed in 23-24, with the former eating fewer calories. So, the top 5% of consumers in India, they have lowered their calorie intake. But the bottom 5 of India's consumers, they have increased their calorie intake. So, that is why the per capita calorie intake, so per capita calorie intake means the daily per individual, how many calories we are taking. So, the difference is coming down. That is, the difference is getting narrowed. The top 5% of Indian urban areas are, as measured by their monthly per capita consumption expenditure, consume around 3092 kilocalories per day, 82.3% more than the 1696 calories of the bottom 5. In rural India, the daily calorie intake of top 5% was 2941 calories, 74.2% higher than the bottom 5. So still, the difference between the calorie consumption is huge between the top 5 as well as the bottom 5. But it has been shrinking, it has been narrowed down. The narrowing of the gap in daily calorie intake between the top and bottom 5% in both areas was primarily a result of lower consumption by top 5% and increased intake by the bottom 5. And according to the Ministry of Statistics, the calorie intake of 5% of Indians in urban regions fell as much as 11.1%, and the reduction of calorie intake at top 5% in rural areas was 5.6%. So both in the urban areas as well as in the rural areas, the top 5% consumers in both urban and rural landscape, their calorie intake has come down. Okay, 11%, around 11% for the urban people and around 6% for the rural people. And the bottom 5% saw their daily calorie intake rise by 5% in rural areas and 4.5 in urban areas. And the bottom 5%, both in the urban landscape and in the rural landscape, they have seen their per capita, their daily calorie intake increase around 5%. Now, what was more interesting is that Indians in urban areas reduced their daily consumption of fat, and while those in the rural areas increased it to uh, 64, 60.4 gram from 59.7, and protein intake meanwhile was largely steady. So in the urban areas, the daily consumption of fat in the urban areas, it fell. Okay. And in the rural area, it increased. So if we are to make a summary out of it, so calorie, the upper 5%, the top 5%, their calorie intake decreased in both the urban areas as well as the rural areas, and the calorie intake increased for the bottom 5% of the consumers, both in urban and rural areas. For fat, the percentage decreased. So the daily consumption of fat decreased in urban areas, and the daily consumption of fat increased a bit per capita in rural areas. The consumption of protein largely remained steady or constant. Now, coming to our question, the difference in daily per capita calorie intake between India's top and bottom 5% of consumers narrowed. This statement is correct because the upper 5% are eating fewer calories, and the later, the bottom 5% are increasing their calorie intake. So this first statement becomes correct. But this protein consumption, it has remain remained steady. So the second statement will be incorrect. So the correct answer here will be A, 1 only. Moving on to the next question, that is the with reference to Garden Fordring Foundation. With reference to Garden Fordring Foundation, consider the following statements. And please excuse for any mispronunciation. Okay, it is purely unintentional. Thank you. So it was registered in 2011 in Dharmshala with the aim of recognizing the reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama Trust is part of it, which supports the welfare of Tibetan people and promote human values, interfaith harmony, and world peace, which have been the key elements of Dalai Lama's lifelong mission. We have to identify the correct statements out of these two. Now, recently, the Dalai Lama was in news because he celebrated his 90th birthday, and also there was a declaration from him that the next Dalai Lama or the next reincarnation of the Dalai Lama the next reincarnated Dalai Lama will not be born in China but in some other part of the world, and the search for the next Dalai Lama has now begun. So the 14th Dalai Lama, that is the current Dalai Lama, announced on July 2 that the institution of Dalai Lama will continue, and the Garden Fordring Trust, this body, shall be the sole authority to recognize the future reincarnation of the Dalai Lama. The Garden Fordring Trust is one of the three institutions associated with the Dalai Lama. So we have three institutions that are associated with the uh, rank of the Dalai Lama or with the uh, power of the Dalai Lama. So these three are registered institutions that are related to His Holiness the Dalai Lama. These are the Garden Fordring Trust, which is a registered body in India and operates from the office of His Holiness. So this Garden Fordring Trust operates from the office of the Dalai Lama itself, and it is registered. It is a registered body in India. Then there is the Dalai Lama Trust. Okay, We have the Dalai Lama Trust and we have the Garden Fordering Foundation, which two is a non-profit organization, and the third is the Garden Fordering Foundation, which is registered in Zurich. That Zurich is in Switzerland. So we have three bodies: Garden Fordering Trust, Garden Fordering Foundation, and the Dalai Lama Trust. Two of them are trust, one of them is foundation. The foundation is the two trusts are non-profit organizations, and the Garden Fordering Foundation is registered in Switzerland, that is in Zurich. The Garden Fordering Trust was registered in 2011 in Dharamshala with the aim of recognizing the reincarnation of Dalai Lama. So it is the Garden Fordering Trust. The foundation is a The Garden Fordering Foundation is a tax-exempt Swiss non-profit with its registered office in Zurich, and it is supervised by the Swiss Federal Department of Home Affairs. Okay. The third trust, that is the third body, the Dalai Lama Trust, is a non-profit charitable organization founded by His Holiness the 14th Dalai Lama in 2009. It is headquartered in New Delhi but works with a range of partners internationally too. So the Dalai Lama Trust and the Garden Fordering Trust are registered in India, are situated in India, but this Garden Fordering Foundation is uh, is located in Switzerland with its office in Zurich. The purpose of this Dalai Lama Trust is to support the welfare of Tibetan people and promote the human values. Now, uh, seeing the statements, so the statement is asking about the Garden Fordering Foundation. It was registered in 2011 in Dharamshala with the aim of recognizing the reincarnation of Dalai Lama. This statement is incorrect because this statement will be correct for the Garden Fordering Trust and not the foundation. Okay. The second statement, the Dalai Lama Trust is part of it. So the Dalai Lama Trust is not a part of the Garden Fordering Foundation. It is a separate body. Okay. So this statement second is also incorrect. The second part of the second statement is correct, but this part, the Dalai Lama Trust is part of it. The Dalai Lama Trust is not a part of the Garden Fordering Foundation. So the correct answer here will be option D, that is neither one nor two. Moving on to the next question, with reference to Quad at Sea Ship Observer Mission, recently seen in news, consider the following statements. The Cross Embarkation Mission, so it is a cross embarkation mission, marks an unprecedented step in Quad Coast Guard collaboration, enhancing joint readiness, operational coordination, and domain awareness in support of free, open, inclusive, and rules-based Indo-Pacific. The mission is active under the Washington Declaration. We have to identify the correct statement. Now, the coast guards of the Quad nations. Quad nations, we know that consists of India, Japan, USA, and Australia. These four countries comprise the Quad. So the coast guards of the Quad nations launched the first ever Quad at Sea Ship Observer mission. This cross embarkation mission marks an unprecedented step in Quad Coast Guard collaboration, enhancing the joint readiness. Further, the mission is in line with the vision presented in the Quad Leaders Summit in September of last year. And the mission is active under the Wilmington Declaration. During the summit held in Wilmington, Delaware, the leaders of the respective nations had planned to launch the initiative to improve the interoperability and advance the maritime safety. So, Wilmington Declaration, it was held in last year. This declaration was made in last year's Quad Summit that was held in Wilmington, Delaware, and Delaware is a state in the United States. So, this Wilmington Declaration is responsible, or this Quad at Sea Ship Observer mission is active under the Wilmington Declaration and not the Washington Declaration. So, this first statement is correct because it is a cross embarkation mission at an unprecedented step in the Quad Coast Guard collaboration. Please note that the navies are not collaborating, but it is the collaboration or the harmony of the Coast Guard. So all the four Coast Guards, Coast Guard of India, Australia, USA, and Japan are involved in this Sea Ship Observer mission. And the mission is active under the not Washington Declaration, but the Wilmington Declaration. So the correct statement here will be statement 1, that is option A, 1 only. Moving on to the next question. With reference to India's coastline, consider the following statements. India's coastline is shorter than it used to be, almost 50% less than the previous length. This change in the length of the coastline is because of the climate change implications, acquisitions of territory, and due to more accurate measurements that have recently been carried out. So, the question is asking about change in India's coastline. Now, this was in news recently. So, India's coastline is now longer than it used to be. Earlier, we used to think that India's coastline is around 7,500 kilometers approximately. Okay, but now we say that it has, due to more due to more accurate measurements, now we can infer that India's coastline is now almost 50% more than the previous length. So now where we have the revised length of coastline in India. This increase happened not because of the acquisition of a territory. The increase in the coastline doesn't happen because we have acquired a territory. Okay, we have acquired some island. It is not like that. It is because of the more accurate measurements that have recently been carried out. Additionally, the number of islands in India also has seen a slight increase. This rise in number has taken place due to India's reassessment of the or recount of its offshore islands. Okay, the increase in the number of islands has nothing to do with the acquisition of some other territory. Okay, we have just recounted, we have reassessed our offshore islands. So here both of the statements are incorrect because India's coastline doesn't is not shorter but is now 50% longer, and it is not because of the climate change or acquisition of territory. Okay, so both the statements are incorrect. So the correct option here will be option D, that is neither one nor two. Moving on to the next question. With reference to the olive ridley turtle, consider the following statements. The species is among the smallest but the most widespread and abundant of the world sea turtle. It is olive green in color, and they are only found in the tropical regions of the Pacific Ocean. Now, we have to tell how many of these, out of these three statements, how many of them are correct. Now, why was it in news, this olive ridley turtle? So the olive ridley turtle was in news because the Environment Ministry, the Union Environment Ministry's Forest Advisory Committee has postponed the approval of the proposed international airport in Odisha's Puri. And why it has done so, is citing the regional office concern about the potential harm to the olive ridley turtle. So, an international airport is proposed in Odisha's Puri, and it has been put on hold. That is, the approval is postponed by the Ministry of Environment because considering the potential harm this project can do on the olive ridley turtles, on the Irrawaddy dolphins, and the migratory birds. Okay, the olive ridley turtles have a heart-shaped shell and are olive green in color, and therefore they got the name olive ridley turtle. So this species of sea turtle is among the smallest, but is the most widespread and plentiful. And they have two nesting strategies, solitary and aribada. The aribada is a phenomena of the synchronized, so mass nesting. So this aribada is the mass nesting. So a question can also arise. If aribada recently seen in news is related to what? Okay. So the statement 1 and statement 2 become correct. Olive ridley turtles are found all over the world, but not necessarily they are not only limited to the Pacific Ocean. They are mainly found in the tropical parts of the ocean, that is the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean, and the Atlantic Ocean. So they are found in the tropical areas of all these three oceans. So the statement 3 will be incorrect. Now, this species is among the smallest, yes, and they are most abundant, the statements. So both these points are correct. So the statement 1 will become correct. It is olive green in color. This statement is also correct. They are only found. See, this word only should grab your attention that something is, so it is making a sweeping generalization. It is making a sweeping statement. So most of such statements are incorrect. So the third statement is incorrect because it is not only found in the Pacific Ocean, but also the tropical parts of the Indian Ocean and the tropical parts of the Atlantic Ocean. So here, two statements are correct. So the correct answer here will be option B. That is only two statements. 1 and 2 are correct. Moving on to the next question. With reference to Nipah, consider the following statements. So Nipah is a viral disease. It is spread by birds. It can be spread from person to person. And we have to tell how many of these three statements are correct. So why it was in news? Because recently the Kerala Health Department issued an alert against the Nipah virus after two positive instances of this deadly zoonotic disease. So zoonotic disease is a disease that transmits from animals to humans. That can transmit from animals to humans. So two positive cases were observed in two different states in Kerala. So the Kerala Health Department has issued the advisory and it has issued an alert. And why it is so? The Nipah is a severe and possibly fatal virus disease with a fatality rate of around 40 to 75%. That is the fatality rate of this Nipah virus. Therefore, it is severe. And the fruit bats, they spread the Nipah virus, not the birds. And this virus can also infect humans and other animals like the pigs. So statement 1 is correct and statement 2 is not correct. And Nipah virus can be transmitted from person to person. So person to person transmission is possible. Animal to person people transmission is also possible. So the correct answer here will be the statement 1 is correct. It is a viral disease. It is spread by birds. This is incorrect. It is spread by the fruit bats. And it can spread from person to person. This statement is correct. So how many statements are correct? Two statements are correct. So the answer will be B, only two. That is 1 and 3 are correct. Now moving on to the next question. With reference to INS Tamal, Indian naval ship Tamal, consider the following statements. It is commissioned at the Yantar shipyard in Kaliningrad, Russia. It is the 8th Talwar class frigate, improved versions of the Krivak 3 class frigates, built by Russia for the Indian Navy as part of the project 1135.6. The Navy describes INS Tamal as a formidable moving fortress at sea. And we have to tell how many of these statements are correct. Now, this INS Tamal was recently commissioned. The commission of INS Tamal at the Yantar shipyard in Kaliningrad, Russia, possibly marks the Indian Navy's final foreign-built warship. So it is like we are considering it as the last foreign-built Indian naval ship. From now on, all the warships that will be acquired by the Navy will be indigenously made or they will be domestically made. So the statement 1 is correct. This is a significant milestone for the Navy, which has gradually designed the shipbuilding by boosting the indigenous content. INS Tamal is the 8th Talwar class frigate. So this INS Tamal is a frigate, okay, which are modified versions of the Krivak 3 class frigates manufactured by Russia for the Indian Navy under Project 1135.6. Therefore, the second statement is also correct. Now, this INS Tamal is the second of the four follow-on ships for the class ordered in 2018. So in 2018, we ordered these 4 frigates. The first frigate was the INS Tushil. Okay. The second frigate is the INS Tamar. Okay. Third is INS Triput. So the first two were made in Russia, okay, and have been commissioned by the Indian Navy. The first INS Tushil was commissioned in Kaliningrad in December 2024. So it was commissioned in December 2024. Okay, the INS Triput and INS Tavasya, these two, third and fourth frigate, are being built in India by the Goa Shipyard Limited. So they will be domestically manufactured by the Goa Shipyard Limited. Okay, the technology will be transferred by the Russia. So with Russian technology and design help. Triput was launched into sea in July and is scheduled to be commissioned in 2026. So this INS Triput is complete and is going on sea trials. Its sea trials are going on, and it is expected to be commissioned in 2026. So we will be having one frigate commissioned in 2024, that is INS Tushil. INS Tamal is commissioned in this year, that is 2025, and INS Triput is expected to be commissioned in 2026. Okay, and this will be, that is, this INS Triput will be India's first indigenously built Talwar class frigate. So all these four frigates are the Talwar class frigate. The Navy describes the INS Tamal as a formidable moving fortress at sea. Okay, and this INS Tamal, it is capable of carrying out the blue water operations. Now, what are the blue water operations? That is the naval operations in deep. So, naval operations beyond seashore, that is deep inside the ocean, not underwater, but deep in the ocean. These blue water operations are done. Okay. So it is capable of the all the four modern naval warfare: the air warfare, the surface level warfare, the underwater warfare, and the electromagnetic warfare. So therefore, all these three statements are correct. That is, it is commissioned at the Yantar shipyard in Kaliningrad, Russia. This is correct, and it is expected to be the last Indian naval warship that is built in some other foreign country. And it is the 8th Talwar class frigate. This statement is also correct. The Navy describes IMS Tamal as the formidable moving fortress at sea. This statement is also correct. So all the three statements are correct. That is 1, 2, and 3. Moving on to the final question of the day. With reference to the ham radio, consider the following statements. It is a licensed radio service that relies on radio waves for establishing communication. It is largely deployed for educational and knowledge purposes. Communication cannot be set up between two identical hams, two licensed hams, sorry. In India, any individual above the age of 21 is permitted to operate a ham radio. And we have to tell out of these four statements how many of them are correct. Now, this ham radio was in news recently because the Indian astronaut, Group Captain Shubhanshu Shukla, on the Axiom 4 mission, he reached the International Space Station. And from the International Space Station, he used this particular ham radio in order to communicate with the school children in India. So, this is ham radio is an amateur radio, sometimes known as the ham radio, is a licensed radio service that uses radio waves to create communication. Okay, so the statement 1 is correct. The trained ham operators can establish contact between two licensed amateur radio operators using a designated frequency. So the second statement is also correct. And the third statement is incorrect. The ham radio services mostly use the educational and informational purposes. In India, everyone above the age of 12 is entitled to use the ham radio. It is not 21 but 12. So The teenage children, they also can use this ham radio. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology issues the licenses for using the ham radio. Therefore, the fourth statement is incorrect. Now, in 1983, the amateur radio was used for the first time on a space shuttle to communicate between the space and the Earth. The ISS, that is the International Space Station, contains a ham radio that is called the amateur radio for International Space Station, that is ARISS, which is frequently used to coordinate astronaut-student contacts. So the teaching opportunity. So the astronauts that are in space, they use this ham radio to communicate with the students on the Earth. Okay, and this provides a teaching opportunity. So this teaching opportunity is supported by the amateur radio organizations as well as the space agencies of the United Nations. Space Agency of United Nations is NASA. Space Agency of Russia is Roscosmos. Canada, Canadian Space Agency, that is CSA. Japan, it is JAXA. And Europe, it is the ESA. And this Canadian Space Agency, NASA, and Roscosmos, all these five agencies were involved in building up the International Space Station. So, looking at the statements, it is a licensed radio service that relies on the radio waves. This statement is correct. And it is largely deployed for education and knowledge purposes. This statement is also correct. And the communication cannot be set up between two licensed hams. This statement is incorrect. It can be set up by the experts. In India, any individual above the age of 21 years, this statement is also incorrect. It is not 21 years, it is the 12 years is permitted to operate a ham radio, and who permits the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, that is MeitY. So here the correct answer will be option B, that is only two statements are correct, statement 1 and statement 2. So that was today's discussion of the last week's current affairs. So I have framed some MCQs on the current affairs of the last week, that is the first week of July. So every Sunday you can expect this weekly current affairs recap with MCQs on Shikara Academy's YouTube channel. Thank you.